seconds away on Studio 5. We're on the road here in Chicago.
Now to the rock star taking over Broadway.
Chatting with Nightline anchor Bryon Pitts and bringing you a look inside the pages of his latest book, Be the One. Then, the Windy City is one of the first stops on Hillsong Young and Free's Youth Revival Tour.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hi.
We're testing their mics for a fun conversation here in Studio 5. And
let's keep them in our prayers and ask for God's help.
Aren't you God's help?
Meet the cast, bringing the true story of courage to the big screen in Studio 5, starting now. And welcome to Studio 5, coming to you this week from the Windy City and home to the very first story in our weekly countdown of the top 5 in uplifting entertainment news. At number 5.
So I'm gonna say that again, and I'm talking to people that's all the way in the back with a lot of space around them. They in the lawn. Chicago!
Chicago wraps its annual Lollapalooza Music Festival. And the Windy City's own Chance the Rapper is among the biggest highlights.
1, 2, 1, 2, always on beat.
Chance joined Francis and the Lights for May I Have This Dance, and even performed the famous dance number.
May I have this dance?
At number 4, we head to Canton, Ohio with congratulations to Kurt Warner.
And I've come to appreciate that the greatest gift any parent can give their child is saying yes to spending time with them.
Paying tribute to his father, the former Arizona Cardinal and St. Louis Ram, is the first Iowa native inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. Warner is a class act and a vocal man of faith.
What happened on the cross ultimately defines Jesus and defines all of us. And what many saw as a loss was our greatest win. He won.
And that begins our countdown of this week's best in uplifting entertainment news. More to come in just a moment. Right now, we want to check in on our first guest. He's a journalist and author of the new book, Be the One. Nightline anchor Bryon Pitts is this week's Studio 5 interview. You were pretty much close to being declared mentally retarded.
Yeah, that was
and here you
diagnosis.
are, 60 Minutes, ABC News,
right?
An illustrious journalistic career. How do you go from mentally retarded to broadcasting to millions?
God's amazing grace. God's grace. I was blessed with a phenomenal mother, Bryon Pitts. She passed away 4 years ago, who just believed what the Bible says. I can do all things through Christ. I mean, I've always had very specific professional goals. Like my goal was to be a network correspondent by 35, a 60 Minutes correspondent by 45, and all those markers I made. But my ultimate goal was to make my mother proud. For a lot of people, I think faith is like this, soft music and thing in the sky. But for me, and what I saw in my mother's life, my own life, that the faith was practical, it was real, you could touch it, and it made all the difference for me.
Follow you on social media, and just the other day I saw you tweet, being born in America is like winning the lottery. What did you mean by that?
As a journalist, it's my job to point out things that aren't working. And there's certainly plenty of things in America that don't work or don't work as well as they should. But my travels, I've been in like 59 countries in my professional life. There ain't no place like home, right? I mean, there's no place like America. I mean, the promise of America is like no place else on earth. Like only in America you can become anything you want to become. Like I'm Christian. You can be a Christian in the U.S. You can be Muslim. You can be Jewish. You can be Hindu. You can practice your faith in the United States. So for all of our flaws, and there are many, the promise of America is like no place on earth. So if you're born in this country, you got a chance. No matter where on the rung you were born,
right,
you have a chance.
Beautiful. You talk about 6 kids in your new book, Be the One, all who overcome some amazing obstacles. What was it about those 6 that you wanted to share their story?
Well, it's funny. At one point, I wanted 7, right? Because 7 is more a biblical number,
yes,
right?
I
But
like it.
for some reason, like the editor said, no, I wouldn't cut it down to 6. Okay, fine. The notion for the book came from Tanya, the first girl in the book. I met her years ago after my first book came out. I was talking at a charter school in Baltimore, where I'm from. This little girl, she was 11 years old at the time. She waited patiently to talk to me when everyone else was done. And she said, Mr. Pitts, when you were my age, when you were 11 years old, growing up in Baltimore, where did you go, where did you hide when the world hurt too much? Come to find out, she was in foster care. And the morning she asked that question of me, she was being sexually abused by an older boy in foster care. And she and I became pen pals. She's a freshman in college now. We've stayed in contact. But I was struck by in my travels how many young people, whether they go to an Ivy League school, no school, intact family, no family at all, that oftentimes young people feel burdened by life, whether it's bullying. And so I wanted this book to be an example of kids, whether it was bullying, sexual abuse, mental health challenges, drug abuse, war, obesity, that whatever your thing is, and we all got something, that it's manageable.
Where did you go to hide when the world hurt you growing up in Baltimore?
Prayer. You know, as human beings, no matter your experience, degree of education, you know, we have the capacity to think, but so far, to see, but so far. But when God is on your side, and when you can sit down in prayer, my mother used to love taking us to church revival. In part because you hear other people got problems worse than yours. So, ooh, Lord, thank God I ain't burdened with that.
Testimony.
Amen. But just like that's been, I mean, I learned to pray. The prayer I say now is a prayer I learned at my mother's side. Dear wise and almighty God, we come to you as humbly as we know how, just to say thank you, Lord. So I think for me, my safe place, if not by my mother's side, was in God's embrace and prayer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. The new book is Be the One, written for young people, but a blessing to you no matter the age. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Much appreciated. Be the One is available right now wherever books are sold. Up next, upbeat worship. Hillsong Young and Free stops by Studio 5 on their youth revival tour, their first time in the U.S.
It has been awesome. I think when we started Young and Free, I think we never thought that we'd be coming to the USA.
And welcome back to Studio 5. We're in Chicago for this week's countdown of the best in uplifting entertainment news. Time now for number 3. For number 3, we continue at this year's NFL Hall of Fame induction.
If this was my last day on earth, and this my final speech,
where NFL superstar LaDainian Tomlinson issues a powerful call for racial unity, paying tribute to his great-great-great-grandfather, George.
170 years ago, George was brought here in chains on a slave ship from West Africa. His last name, Tomlinson, was given to him by the man who owned him. What extraordinary courage it must have taken for him to rebuild his life after the life he was born to was stolen. My name began with the man who owned my great-great-great-grandfather. Now, it's proudly carried by me, my children, my extended family. The family legacy that began in such a cruel way has given birth to generations of successful, caring Tomlinsons. I firmly believe that God chose me to help bring two races together under one last name, Tomlinson.
At number 2.
I married April.
I'm sorry, you carried April?
No, I married her.
Fans of TV's most family-friendly show, The Middle, are getting a final season to say goodbye. The show debuted in 2009. And in this tweet, ABC announced the end of one of its longest-running comedies.
Gracie Peterson texted me asking me what time we'll be home. That's it, we gotta move.
Come on, Brick. They like you and they're cute.
And that leaves only one more headline in this week's countdown of the best in uplifting entertainment news. You want to stick around for that. Hillsong Young and Free can count among its fans Justin Bieber, but band members work just as hard to attract the famous as they do the not so famous. Hillsong Young and Free is this week's What's Playing in My Ear.
This is real love. This is real love. This is real love. This is real love.
first question for you. You are on the road in the middle of this tour. What do you miss most about being away from home?
My bed, probably my pillow.
Your bed.
Yeah, good one, good one.
Yeah, but besides that, I mean, I miss home. I miss church back home.
Yeah.
But it's fun being here on the road.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at how much American young people love your music?
Yeah, I feel like young people are more open to, you know, Jesus than ever, and so it has been awesome. And I think when we started Young and Free, I think we never thought that we would be coming to the USA. Mm-hmm. Although we always hoped maybe that we would. I think being here and being able to like play in front of people and lead worship, and it's surprising, but I think it's cool, and it's been awesome to see people just respond in such a positive way, and it's amazing.
How did Young and Free start? You sort of hinted at this. We're talking 2012, 2013. What happened?
Hillsong United used to be the youth band, and so we would grow up listening to their songs, singing their songs, and they kind of grew past the youth group. They started getting married, having kids, and United kind of formed into its own cool thing. And so there was this moment where it was kind of like, we need to, a band that expresses kind of what's going on in our youth group right now. And so our senior pastor, Bryon and Bobby, senior pastors, and both Laura and Pete, our youth pastors, kind of came up with this idea, well, let's start like a band. Like, let's just, get our guys writing songs, and we were those guys, just serving in youth, leading worship, singing on Friday nights. And, we started writing, and it just kind of naturally formed into this thing that is now Young and Free. And so we would say we're the youth expression of Hillsong Church. And so that's what Young and Free is, I guess.
The current project that you're touring is called Youth Revival?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How would you describe the music and the collection there? What would you say about that?
One more time, we say, you're pulling me closer and closer.
Well, that was the mandate that Aiden was talking about when we first started as a youth ministry, is that we would write songs that represented our youth ministry. And not only that, songs that young people would want to sing to, they would want to dance to, and ultimately songs that they would resource them to show their friends at school, to actually even get beyond the four walls of the church. So, and I think that's the funny thing, is like people often ask like how we can keep doing that and writing songs like this. And I think it's what we listen to, it's what we love to create. So it actually is a super natural thing. I think it's always been really funny. It's just, I feel like God's hand has been all over it all these years. Just, it has to be. And then ultimately as well, like, I think the fun thing about this album as well is, not only is it, I feel like, a step forward from the first album musically, but also lyrically and what the songs say. It's pretty cool that not just as a ministry but us as well, like where we've come, our relationships with God, how they've moved forward. And I think Youth Revival is an expression of where we are as a church and where we are as a band as well.
Now, you're at work on another project too. We're expecting some new music soon? We're hoping? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Always working on the next thing.
Yeah, there could be a new song coming very soon, in the next couple of weeks.
Exclusive.
Thank you for giving us the scoop here.
Yeah.
So there could be something new in the works.
Yeah.
I have to ask you this, just because it's a huge name here in America who really, really loves you. Justin Bieber has been posting on Instagram, him at Young and Free concerts, him dancing. His favorite song, I think, is Falling Into You.
1, 2, 3, ho!
How does it feel to have someone like that really just champion the music that you're putting out?
Yeah, I think it's really cool that someone as influential as him is making a stand for Jesus. And the fact that he is listening to worship music and can use his platform to, I don't know, get the message out there about Jesus and who he is and what he's done is just an honor, I guess. And yeah, we want to keep reaching people, the nameless, the famous, and yeah, that's what it's about. God's about people, and we want to be about people.
Hillsong Young and Free's last project is called Youth Revival, but you can expect new music in the very near future. Still to come on Studio 5.
You didn't meet before. I'm Michael. You're the soul of the church, ain't you? The fact is, you had 12 people in that church today. Jesus had 12 people. He done all right, didn't he?
An exclusive first look at the film All Saints. And welcome back to Studio 5. We're at home in Chicago this week. Right now it's time for the #1 headline in our weekly countdown of the best in uplifting entertainment news. At #1.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Ministry could be the next move for Hillary Clinton. That's revealed in the Atlantic article on the forthcoming devotional from Clinton's pastor, called Strong for a Moment Like This. It's based on correspondence and scriptures he used to send her daily.
Thank you for answering the charge given to us by Jesus, as Matthew records. To feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick, welcome the stranger.
According to the Atlantic story, Clinton recently told her pastor she wants to preach.
Scripture tells us that faith without works is dead.
And that wraps the countdown this week, but certainly not the show. Right now, it's time for your first look at a powerful film. It's called All Saints.
God spoke to me. He wants us to turn the land around the church into a farm.
God spoke to you. Be God.
Yeah, there's just the one aim.
Well, what did he say?
He said, I've given you land, I've given you farmers, do the math.
God said, do the math.
I play all these good guys in the movies. I'm sort of, my buddy Dennis Leary calls me America's boyfriend. Because I've just been in Sex and the City and Serendipity and Big Fat Greek Wedding. These movies where I'm the boyfriend always. And I'm going to take it one step further now and be a minister. It's like, can't I play a bad guy?
Look at Miss Delphia's hair. You could raise sparrows in there.
With a voice like this, I am learning about typecasting,
No.
and so I'm definitely typecast now as the older, that's what's so sad. You're the old, if they need a, little squatty church lady, I always get it, But what I didn't like about this, she's mean as all heck. And I can tell you exactly the women I was thinking of.
Please share.
I grew up in the church, and so I tell people all the time, I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. And my part in this movie is one of the uglies. She reminds me of a lot of church folks that get completely off focus of what the church is all about. And that's why I love the story. After I investigated the whole story and saw the finished product of the movie, I was like, wow, this is a must-see story for especially a lot of the smaller churches out there that are struggling.
What's more American than farming? Start a farm, you work together, you save the church.
What's your hope for this movie? What do you want people to get?
This movie's going to end up in about 1,000 theaters, which is a big release for a movie like this, a small movie that doesn't have any special effects. This movie costs as much to walk in and go see as this movie that costs $100 million, $200 million with lots of special effects. And people tend to go over here because they feel like they're going to get more value out of that. But if we can get a certain number of people to buy tickets to see this movie, we can make more movies like this.
And we'll be bringing you a more in-depth look at All Saints in the coming weeks. Up next in Studio 5. He's actually the first singer to record a Lemonade album. Chicago's own Jay Quest is here to drop some wisdom. We are just about out of time for this edition of Studio 5 coming to you from Chicago. So let's look ahead to where we're going next week.
Rich city folk live in fancy apartments, but their air is so polluted they can't even see the stars.
It is a film about family and about learning that everybody is trying to love you as best as they can.
We'd have to be out of our minds to trade places with any of them.
Dr. Taylor said we should go to real school.
A real school, huh?
This is as real as it gets, kids. You learn from living.
The Glass Castle are these plans that Rex has been working on her whole life, and it's this idea that once they strike it rich, once he makes a bunch of money, he's going to buy this beautiful house that's all made out of glass.
You know, all this running around is only temporary. We just need perfect location, then we can get to work on our castle.
This place doesn't have any running water or electricity.
Ignore her. She was born without vision.
It's this Eden, it's this place that they're going to get to, this beautiful paradise that they're not in now. And although they're living in squalor, one day the glass castle will be there.
We were drowning.
But I'm begging, please, I would never let anything bad happen to you. But I can't let you cling to the side your whole life just because you're scared.
It was your job to protect us.
You have a right to be angry. I know you love him, and you'll regret it if you don't come home.
And that's just one story from next week's Rundown. As for this show, I'm giving the final word to hip-hop artist Jay Quest. He's got a message for everyone, but especially young women.
Same people who burn witches for being different. That's Sapphire and Jemima, the same difference. We aspire the image they put in front of our faces. Lay on the ground and stay in your place. That's the same prison that I can't visit. It's fiction that had me lost. Man, I ain't going like United dragged me off. Bump that, your eyes beautiful as is, Picola. But she ain't happy till she found him. I roll up and love everything I see like a young Zora Neale. Tell the oral real too. Got a good sense of humor and reality too. Hold on to that in your sexuality too. Cause they're gonna try to take that too. White makeup, they're gonna try to make that you. So a message for the black girls out here, you know, in the streets who, again, chasing other people's dreams, but to know that they're natural and to know that they're beloved by God.
And I'm sure to be sharing that message with my very own daughter, Sarah. That one's for you. That is going to do it for this edition of Studio 5. Until next time, reach out and touch me at F from Graham on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. And then you, come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.